I still recall that day vividly, as though it happened just yesterday. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where the sun lingers low in the sky, casting a golden hue over everything. The air carried the scent of fallen leaves and distant chimney smoke, a quiet reminder that winter was fast approaching. I had just finished steeping a cup of tea when my phone buzzed. A message from Lisa, my best friend since college. Lisa, hey, can you do me a huge favor? I chuckled, shaking my head. Lisa was never one for small talk. Me, depends. What kind of favor? Her response came almost immediately. Lisa, it's about Jake. He's in a bit of a situation. I'm out of town for the weekend and don't know who else to ask. Jake, her son. I had known him since the day he was born, though he wasn't really a boy anymore. He had just turned 19. The last time I had seen him was a few months ago at his birthday dinner. He had grown into a tall, broad-shouldered young man, his once soft features now sharpened with maturity. He had his mother's deep brown eyes and a disarming smile that made him instantly likable. Me. What kind of situation? Lisa hesitated before answering. Lisa. He had a little trouble with his car, nothing serious, but he's stuck and doesn't know what to do. Could you check on him? I sighed, already reaching for my coat. I had been looking forward to a quiet evening with my book, but after everything Lisa and I had been through together, there was no way I'd say no. Me. Of course. Where is he? She sent a location pin. Not far, just beyond town, near the old train tracks. I grabbed my keys and headed out. When I arrived, I spotted Jake leaning against his car, arms crossed, his face a mix of frustration and relief. His silver sedan sat awkwardly on the roadside, one tire completely flattened, the last remnants of sunlight caught in his tousled hair as he straightened at the sight of me. Oh, thank God, he exhaled. I thought I'd be stuck here all night. I stepped out of my car, glancing at the damaged tire. Lisa mentioned car trouble, but she didn't say anything about a flat. Jake rubbed the back of his neck, looking sheepish. Yeah, I might have misjudged a turn and hit a curb pretty hard. I was about to call a tow truck, but Mom said you might be able to help. I folded my arms. And you don't have a spare? He shifted on his feet, looking embarrassed. I do. I've never changed a tire before. I chuckled. Well, that's something every man should know. Come on, I'll show you. We got to work. I walked him through the process, loosening the lug nuts, carefully lifting the car with the jack, removing the flat. He paid close attention, his brow furrowed in concentration. At one point, he looked up at me and grinned. You're really good at this. Do you do this often? Let's just say I've had my fair share of car troubles over the years, I said. You learn when you don't have someone to call. His expression softened. Yeah, I guess I've always had Mom to rely on. There was something in his voice, something unspoken. I glanced at him. Everything okay? He hesitated, then admitted, I don't know. I just feel stuck, like I should be figuring things out, but I don't know where to start. Everyone keeps saying, you're an adult now, but I don't feel like one. I set the spare tire in place, and handed him the wrench. Tighten these, and trust me, no one really knows what they're doing at 19. You figure it out as you go. He looked up at me, his expression unreadable. What about you? When did you figure it all out? I laughed. Still working on it. That made him smile. He finished securing the tire, and I checked his work before nodding in approval. Good job. Now, let's get you back on the road. As he packed up the tools, he glanced at me again. Would you mind if I hung out at your place for a bit? I kind of don't feel like going home yet. Something in his voice, a quiet vulnerability, made me pause. But I nodded. Of course, let's go. And that's how it all began. How one small favor led to something I never could have foreseen. Something that changed everything. By the time we arrived at my house, the sky had deepened into twilight. A cool breeze rustled through the trees, lining my quiet street. I parked in my usual spot, and Jake pulled in behind me, switching off his engine with a sigh. He sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel before finally stepping out. You okay? I asked, locking my car. Yeah, he said quickly, but there was no conviction in his voice. Just thinking. I didn't push. I knew that feeling all too well, the weight of unspoken thoughts. Instead, I let him inside, flipping on the lights. The warmth of my home welcomed us, the faint scent of cinnamon lingering from a candle I had burned earlier. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound breaking the quiet. Make yourself comfortable, I said, slipping off my coat. You hungry? He hesitated before nodding. A little, yeah. I moved to the kitchen, opening the fridge. I've got some leftover pasta, or I can make something quick. Pasta sounds great. As I heated the food, I stole a glance at him. He had settled onto a stool by the counter, shoulders slightly hunched, fingers absently tracing the wood grain. Something was definitely weighing on him. I decided to ease into it. So tell me, what's going on? Why didn't you want to go home? He exhaled heavily, rubbing his temples. It's just, things at home don't feel the same. Mom's always busy. I get it, but ever since high school ended, I feel like I don't belong anywhere. College wasn't for me. Work feels pointless. Everyone else is moving forward, and I'm just stuck. I nodded, placing the plate in front of him. That's normal, Jake. The world makes it seem like you should have everything figured out by 18, but that's not how it works. He toyed with his fork, his gaze meeting mine. How did you figure out what you wanted? I let out a small laugh. Who said I ever did? Life isn't a straight path. I've tried things, failed, started over more times than I can count. At 52, I'm still learning. Something in my words seemed to strike him. It's weird talking to you like this. I've known you my whole life, but I never really knew you. I tilted my head. What do you mean? I always saw you as just Mom's best friend, but tonight, You actually listen. A quiet moment passed before I offered a small smile. Well, you're not a kid anymore, Jake. You deserve to be heard. I didn't know it then, but that night was just the beginning. I didn't sleep much that night. I tossed and turned, my mind replaying the conversation with Jake over and over. His words, his expression, the way he looked at me. Not as his mother's best friend, but as a person, someone who truly saw him. I told myself I was overthinking it, that he was just lost, looking for guidance, and I happened to be there at the right moment. But even as I tried to convince myself, I couldn't ignore the way my heart had reacted to him. By the time the sun peeked through my curtains, I had barely gotten a few hours of rest. I got up, wrapped myself in my robe, and padded to the kitchen. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the fridge. I expected Jake to still be asleep, but when I turned the corner, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, sipping a cup of coffee. "Morning," he said, his voice still rough with sleep. I blinked in surprise. "You drink coffee?" He smirked. "I do now. Hope you don't mind." I helped myself. I chuckled, shaking my head. "Not at all." I grabbed a mug and poured myself some, taking a slow sip. The warmth spread through me, waking me up. "Did you sleep okay?" Jake shrugged. "Better than I expected. Your couch is pretty comfortable." I leaned against the counter, studying him. He looked different this morning, more settled, but still deep in thought. "You heading home soon?" I asked carefully. He hesitated, running a hand through his messy hair. "I don't know. I kind of don't want to." I raised an eyebrow. Jake sighed. "Last night was the first time in a long time I felt like I could actually talk to someone. Like, really talk. And I don't want to go back to pretending everything's fine." His words hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. I understood that feeling all too well, the fear of returning to a life that felt hollow. I sat across from him, wrapping my hands around my mug. "So what do you want to do?" He exhaled, glancing out the window. "I don't know, but I think I need to figure it out somewhere that isn't home." A thought crossed my mind before I could stop it. "You could stay here, just for a little while, if you need time to think." His eyes snapped back to mine, searching. "You'd be okay with that?" I hesitated. Would I? Having him here, under my roof, sharing my space, it felt like opening a door to something I wasn't sure I was ready for. And yet, I couldn't ignore the pull inside me. "Yeah," I said finally, "I would." A slow smile spread across his face. "Thank you." His voice carried a quiet relief. That was the moment everything changed. The days stretched into a quiet rhythm. Jake settled into my home like he had always belonged there. In the mornings, we drank coffee together, sometimes in comfortable silence, sometimes in deep conversation. He helped around the house, fixing things I had long since given up on, tightening loose cabinet handles, unclogging the stubborn bathroom drain, even rearranging a shelf in my pantry when he noticed I could barely reach the top. At night, we watched old movies on the couch, and I learned things about him I never knew. He hated horror movies but loved psychological thrillers. He had a habit of drumming his fingers against his knee when he was thinking. He carried more weight on his shoulders than he ever let on. It was strange, this unexpected closeness, and yet it felt natural. But there was something else beneath the surface, something neither of us spoke about, a quiet tension that hummed in the space between us, in the lingering glances, in the way our conversations sometimes stretched into hushed whispers in the dim glow of the living room lamp. And then, one evening, it all came to a head. We were cleaning up after dinner, standing side by side at the sink. I washed, he dried. A simple routine. But tonight, it felt different. The air between us was heavy, charged with something unspoken. Jake reached for the plate in my hand, and for a moment, our fingers brushed. I froze, my breath catching. I should have pulled away, should have laughed it off like it was nothing, but I didn't. When I looked up, he was already watching me. "Jake," I started, my voice barely above a whisper. "I know," he said softly, his fingers still resting against mine. "I know this is complicated. Complicated didn't even begin to cover it." He was 19. I was 52. He was the son of my best friend. And yet, none of that changed the fact that something had shifted between us, something real and undeniable. I swallowed hard. "This is wrong?" he interrupted gently. "Because it doesn't feel wrong to me." I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply. Every logical part of me screamed that this was impossible, that I should put an end to it before it went any further. But my heart, my traitorous heart, whispered something else entirely. When I opened my eyes, he was still there, waiting, patient. "I don't know what to do," I admitted. Jake exhaled, his fingers tightening ever so slightly around mine. "Then let's not rush. Let's just be honest about what this is." I searched his face, looking for hesitation, doubt, but all I saw was certainty. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to stop thinking, to stop overanalyzing. I let myself feel, and in that moment, I knew this was something neither of us could walk away from. It was unexpected, it was unconventional, but it was ours.